California doesn't just exist, it was assembled. Piece by piece over millions of years, where tectonic plates collided, oceans rose and vanished, and mountains were pushed out of the earth itself. What you see today is not a single landscape, but layers of history stacked together. Burning deserts, glacial valleys, volcanic peaks, and coastlines carved by restless waves. It's a place where the highest peaks stand just miles from the lowest land, where ancient trees outlive empires, and where the ground beneath your feet is still quietly shifting. California isn't defined by one story. It's a collection of extremes, built by pressure, time, and movement. And somehow all of it exists in one place, forming a landscape that feels less like a state and more like a world of its own. Towering over Yosemite Valley, El Capitan rises approximately 3,000 feet straight up, forming one of the largest exposed granite faces in the world. Unlike jagged peaks formed by uplift, this monolith is defined by vertical precision, a near continuous wall of solid rock. It was formed deep underground as molten granite cooled and hardened, later exposed as erosion stripped away the surrounding material. What remains is a surface that is both massive and uniform, with minimal fractures compared to other formations. The scale is difficult to process from ground level. There are no gradual slopes, no visual transitions, just an abrupt rise from the valley floor to the summit above. Wind, water, and temperature shifts continue to affect its surface, but at a pace almost invisible to human observation. It doesn't change dramatically, it endures. It's not just tall, it's vertically uninterrupted, defined by scale and exposure rather than complexity. Fed not by a single river but by underground springs, Burney Falls releases nearly 100 million gallons of water every single day. And what makes that number even more remarkable is consistency. It barely changes, even during California's driest seasons. The water seeps directly through porous volcanic rock, emerging from dozens of points along a 129-foot basalt cliff, creating a curtain-like cascade instead of one central drop. This gives the falls a layered, almost surreal appearance, as if the cliff itself is leaking. The water is exceptionally cold and clear, often maintaining visibility beyond 30 feet, with a striking blue-green pool at the base, formed by mineral-rich runoff. These basalt formations were created millions of years ago through volcanic activity, and they now act like a natural filtration system. Even Theodore Roosevelt famously called it the eighth wonder of the world, not because it's the tallest or widest, but because it feels engineered by nature with impossible precision. Shaped by time, pressure, and the slow collapse of ancient lake beds, the Badlands of Death Valley National Park are a landscape that looks less like Earth and more like something abandoned by it. These hills weren't built upward, they were carved downward, millions of years ago. This region sat beneath layers of water, where mud, clay, and minerals settled into thick deposits. As the climate shifted and the lakes vanished, those layers hardened, then fractured, then eroded into a maze of ridges and gullies. What remains is a terrain defined by colour and decay. Reds from iron, purples from manganese, yellows from oxidised minerals, all exposed by relentless wind and rare but violent rainfall. There's no vegetation to soften the surface, no soil to stabilise it. Every ridge is temporary, every slope is collapsing in slow motion. It's not just a landscape, it's a process still unfolding, where the ground itself is quietly disappearing. At 282 feet below sea level, Badwater Basin is the lowest point in North America, a place where gravity has pulled the land down as far as it can go. Located within Death Valley National Park, this basin is defined by extremes: heat, dryness, and a surface that looks frozen in place, but is constantly changing. What appears to be solid ground is actually a vast field of salt, formed as water once collected here, then evaporated under intense desert heat, leaving behind thick mineral deposits. Over time, those salts expand, crack, and reorganise into perfect hexagonal patterns, stretching across the basin like a natural mosaic. Despite its name, the small pool of water that gave Badwater its identity is undrinkable, too saturated with salt to sustain life. And yet, microscopic organisms survive here, adapting to conditions that would destroy most ecosystems. It's not just low in elevation, it's one of the harshest, most chemically extreme environments on the continent. At first glance it looks like a frozen wasteland, but step closer and the surface reveals itself as something far more hostile. The Devil's Golf Course is a massive salt pan, where the ground has hardened into jagged, razor-sharp formations, making it nearly impossible to walk without injury. It's not sand, it's not rock, it's crystallised salt, pushed upward and broken apart by cycles of heat and evaporation. The name wasn't given lightly. A 1930s guidebook famously claimed that only the devil could play golf here. And standing on its uneven surface, that statement doesn't feel exaggerated. These formations were created as groundwater rose to the surface, carrying dissolved minerals. As the water evaporated, salt was left behind, slowly building layer upon layer over thousands of years. Under the extreme heat of Death Valley, the salt expands, contracts and fractures, creating a chaotic terrain that seems alive in its own harsh way, sharp, unstable, and constantly reshaping itself. Unlike most deserts where sand spreads endlessly, the Mesquite Flat sand dunes are contained, trapped between surrounding mountains that control the wind and hold the landscape in place. Located within Death Valley National Park, these dunes form a shifting but stable system where movement happens daily, but the overall structure remains. The dunes were created as wind carried sand from surrounding rock formations and deposited it into this low basin. Over time, patterns emerged, sharp ridges, smooth slopes, and rippling textures that change with every gust. Despite the motion, the dunes don't drift away. The mountains act like barriers, forcing the sand to circulate within a fixed boundary. Temperatures here can exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and the lack of vegetation allows the wind to reshape the surface freely. What you see one day won't look the same the next. It's not a static landscape. It's a constantly rewritten one. Stretching along California's rugged edge, the Big Sur coastline is not a place that was shaped gently. It was forced into existence by tectonic pressure, erosion, and isolation. Mountains rise abruptly from the Pacific, creating one of the most dramatic land-to-ocean transitions in the world. There are no wide beaches here, no gradual slopes, just cliffs that drop straight into open water. The region remained largely inaccessible for centuries, which is why it still feels untouched. Even today, there are no major cities, no chain stores, no billboards, just a narrow ribbon of road cutting through raw terrain. The name itself comes from the Spanish El País Grande del Sur, meaning the big country of the south, a reference to how vast and unexplored it once was. Fog rolls in without warning, winds carve the cliffs continuously, and landslides reshape the landscape year after year. It's not preserved, it's simply too difficult to control. Isolated in the middle of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz Island is defined less by its size and more by its surroundings. Cold, fast-moving water and strong currents make it one of the most difficult locations to reach without controlled access. Originally used as a military fort, it later became a federal prison from 1934 to 1963, housing some of the most well-known criminals in US history. The location wasn't chosen randomly, it was selected because escape was nearly impossible. Even strong swimmers would struggle against the temperature and current. The island itself is composed of exposed rock, with minimal soil and vegetation. structures built on top had to adapt to limited space and unstable conditions. Today, it stands as a preserved site, not restored but maintained, its buildings still reflecting the constraints under which they were constructed. It's not remote by distance, it's isolated by environment. Suspended between cliffs along the Big Sur coastline, the Bixby Creek Bridge is more than just infrastructure. It's an engineering response to an impossible landscape. Completed in 1932, during the Great Depression, it was built to connect a region that had remained isolated due to terrain that resisted construction. The bridge stands over 260 feet above the canyon floor, making it one of the tallest single-span concrete bridges in the world at the time. Its open spandrel arch design wasn't just aesthetic, it was necessary to withstand strong coastal winds and seismic activity common in the region. What makes it unique is how seamlessly it fits into the environment. Instead of dominating the landscape, it follows its curvature, allowing the coastline to remain the focal point. At a cost of around $23,000, significant for its time, it became a critical link in completing Highway 1 by 1937. It doesn't just cross the land, it adapts to it. Flowing from land directly into the Pacific Ocean, McWay Falls is one of the few waterfalls in the United States that empties onto a coastal beach. Dropping approximately 80 feet, it exists in a narrow canyon where fresh water meets salt water in a way that feels almost too precise to be natural. Located within Julia Pfeiffer Burns State Park, the waterfall is fed by McWay Creek, which collects runoff from the surrounding cliffs. What makes it unusual is its consistency. While many waterfalls depend heavily on seasonal rainfall, McWay maintains a steady flow even during drier periods. The beach below it is inaccessible, which has unintentionally preserved its condition. No footprints, no development, just erosion and natural movement shaping it over time. The surrounding cliffs continue to shift, and during high tide, the water appears to fall directly into the ocean. It's not just rare, it's perfectly positioned between two changing worlds. Once a booming gold mining settlement, Bodie now stands frozen in a state known as arrested decay. At its peak in the late 1800s, it had a population of nearly 10,000 people. With over 2,000 structures, including saloons, gambling halls and businesses built almost overnight after gold was discovered in 1859. But as quickly as it grew, it collapsed. The gold supply declined, fires destroyed large sections of the town, and by the early 20th century, most residents had left. What remains today is not restored. It's preserved exactly as it was abandoned. Around 100 buildings still stand, many filled with original items left behind: furniture, tools, even merchandise on shelves. The town gained a reputation for lawlessness, once described as a sea of sin. Unlike reconstructed historical sites, Bodie hasn't been cleaned up or modernised. It hasn't been rebuilt, it's simply been left behind, allowing time itself to become part of the experience. Rising to 14,505 feet, Mount Whitney is the highest peak in the contiguous United States, and its presence dominates the surrounding landscape of the Sierra Nevada. But its height alone isn't what defines it, it's the contrast. Within a short distance lies one of the lowest points in North America, creating one of the most extreme elevation changes on the continent. The mountain was first successfully climbed in 1873, and since then, it has become a major destination for experienced hikers and climbers. Despite its accessibility, compared to other high peaks, the altitude creates serious challenges: reduced oxygen levels, sudden weather changes, and physical strain. Geologically, Whitney is part of a massive granite formation that formed deep underground before being pushed upward over millions of years. Glacial activity later carved its sharp ridges and steep faces. It wasn't built in a moment, it was exposed over time, layer by layer, through pressure and erosion working together. At the base of Mount Whitney lies a landscape that feels completely disconnected from the peak towering above it. The Alabama hills are defined by rounded, weathered rock formations that contrast sharply with the jagged granite of the Sierra Nevada behind them. These rocks were shaped by erosion, wind, water and temperature changes breaking down the surface over millions of years. Unlike sharp mountain peaks, the formations here are smooth and curved, creating natural arches, tunnels and open spaces between them. The area sits at a much lower elevation, but visually it frames Mount Whitney in a way that makes the mountain appear even more imposing. This contrast is what has made the location a frequent filming site, used in over 400 films and productions. The name itself dates back to 1863, referencing the CSS Alabama, a Confederate warship. But what defines the area today isn't its name. It's the way erosion sculpted the land into something almost deliberately shaped. Hidden within the Alabama hills, Mobius Arch is a natural rock formation that stands out not because of its size, but because of its alignment. The arch perfectly frames Mount Whitney in the distance, creating a composition that looks almost engineered. Formed through erosion, the arch developed as softer sections of rock wore away, leaving behind a curved opening. What remains is stable but not permanent. Continued weathering will eventually alter or collapse it, as it has with many similar formations. The site has been used as a landmark for thousands of years, long before modern mapping, due to its distinct shape and visibility within the landscape. Today, it's accessible via a short trail, making it one of the most recognisable features in the region. What makes it unique isn't just the rock itself, it's the positioning. Stretching along the Pacific just across the bay, from San Diego, Coronado Beach looks calm at first glance, but its uniqueness is hidden in the sand itself. Unlike typical coastlines, the sand here contains mica particles, tiny mineral flakes that reflect sunlight and give the surface a subtle shimmering effect. It doesn't just look bright, it almost glows under direct light. The beach runs for miles, wide and flat, shaped by consistent wave action and coastal currents that redistribute sand over time. Its gentle slope makes the water appear calmer than other parts of the California coast, but beneath that surface, tides continuously reshape the shoreline. Behind it sits the historic Hotel del Coronado, but the real story is geological, how erosion from inland rock formations carried mineral-rich sediments down to the ocean. Where they settled and transformed the texture of the beach itself. It's not just a coastline, it's a surface built from light. Tucked between sandstone cliffs, La Jolla Cove is one of the clearest natural coastal environments in California. On calm days, underwater visibility can exceed 30 feet, revealing a marine ecosystem that operates just below the surface. Located within the protected waters of the San Diego La Jolla Underwater Park, this small cove functions as both a habitat and a natural observation point. The cliffs surrounding it act as barriers, reducing wave intensity and creating stable conditions for marine life. Tide pools form along the rocky edges, exposing species like anemones, starfish and crabs during low tide. But the most recognisable residents are the harbour seals, which gather along the rocks for rest and thermoregulation. The water here isn't just clear, it's protected. Fishing restrictions and conservation efforts have allowed biodiversity to thrive in a space where visibility, geography, and regulation combine to create a controlled natural system. It's not isolated, it's intentionally preserved. Positioned at the western edge of the Mojave Desert, Antelope Valley is defined by contrast. Open desert terrain, interrupted by seasonal transformation. For most of the year, the landscape is dry, flat, and exposed. But under the right conditions, it becomes something entirely different. The valley sits within a rain shadow zone, meaning precipitation is limited and unpredictable. However, when winter rainfall aligns with temperature patterns, dormant seeds buried in the soil activate simultaneously. What follows isn't gradual, it's sudden. Rolling hills that were once muted and lifeless begin to shift in colour, driven by native plant species adapted to survive long dry periods. Wind patterns, soil composition and elevation all influence how this transformation spreads across the valley. It's not a permanent feature, it's a timed response, a system built on waiting, where the landscape holds its potential underground until conditions allow it to emerge. Established in 1890, Sequoia National Park protects one of the most extreme vertical ecosystems in North America. Elevation here ranges from foothills to alpine peaks, creating multiple climate zones within a single region. But what defines the park isn't its size, it's what grows inside it. The terrain includes deep canyons, granite cliffs, and over 800 miles of trails, many leading into remote backcountry areas rarely visited. Water systems cut through the landscape, fed by snowmelt from higher elevations, supporting dense forest growth below. Fire plays a critical role here. Rather than destroying the ecosystem, periodic burns clear underbrush and trigger seed release in certain species. Without fire, the forest would struggle to regenerate. It's a managed wilderness where preservation doesn't mean stopping change. It means allowing natural processes to continue under controlled conditions. Among the many species in Sequoia National Park, the giant sequoias stand apart, not for their height alone, but for their mass. These trees can exceed 250 feet tall and reach diameters of over 30 feet, making them the largest living organisms on Earth by volume. Their bark can be up to 3 feet thick, providing insulation against fire, insects, and environmental damage. Unlike most trees, they depend on fire for reproduction. Heat opens their cones, releasing seeds into nutrient-rich soil cleared by previous burns. Some of these trees are over 2,000 years old, having survived droughts, storms, and climate shifts that reshaped the entire region. Their root systems are relatively shallow, spreading wide rather than deep, relying on stability from surrounding trees rather than individual anchoring. They don't grow quickly and they don't move, but over time they dominate the landscape simply by enduring. Rising sharply from the forest floor, Moro Rock is a granite dome formed through a process known as exfoliation, where outer layers of rock peel away over time due to pressure release and weathering. What remains is a smooth, rounded structure that stands prominently above the surrounding landscape. Accessible via a staircase of over 350 steps carved directly into the stone, the climb leads to a narrow summit with unobstructed views of the Sierra Nevada. From the top, elevation and exposure combine to reveal the scale of the park below. Forests, valleys, and distant peaks all visible in a single frame. The rock itself was formed millions of years ago as part of a larger granite mass, later exposed as erosion removed the surrounding material. Unlike jagged peaks, Moro Rock's shape is defined by gradual breakdown rather than sharp formation. It doesn't tower through complexity, it stands out through isolation and position. Stretching along California's central coast, Monterey Bay is not just a body of water. It's a deep marine system shaped by a hidden structure beneath it. Below the surface lies the Monterey Submarine Canyon, one of the largest underwater canyons in the world, plunging deeper than the Grand Canyon in some sections. This formation drives cold, nutrient-rich water upward through a process called upwelling, fueling one of the most biologically active marine environments on Earth. The bay supports a dense concentration of life: fish, seals, sea lions, and migrating whales, all sustained by this constant nutrient cycle. Kelp forests grow in thick underwater columns, acting as both shelter and feeding grounds for countless species. Protected within the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, the region balances conservation with controlled human activity. It's not just an ecosystem, it's a self-sustaining oceanic engine, operating just offshore. Rising to over 14,000 feet, Mount Shasta dominates the northern California landscape as a dormant stratovolcano built from overlapping eruptions over time. Unlike a single cone volcano, it consists of multiple layers formed by successive flows of lava and ash, creating a complex structure rather than a uniform peak. Its last known eruption occurred in the late 18th century, but geological activity beneath the surface remains active, making it a site of ongoing study. The mountain supports several glaciers, including the Whitney Glacier, which contributes to regional water systems by feeding streams and rivers below. Snow covers the upper elevations for much of the year, while lower slopes transition into forested terrain, creating multiple climate zones across a single structure. The mountain isn't just tall, it's built in stages, shaped by repeated volcanic events rather than a single eruption. It stands quiet now, but its structure reflects a history of pressure and release. Formed by the construction of a massive dam on the Sacramento River, Lake Shasta is the largest reservoir in California, capable of holding approximately 4.5 million acre-feet of water. Its scale is not just horizontal, it extends deep into multiple arms, creating a network of inlets and submerged valleys. The lake serves multiple functions: water storage, flood control, irrigation, and hydroelectric power generation. During wet seasons, it captures excess runoff, releasing it gradually to prevent downstream flooding. In drier periods, it becomes a critical supply source for both agriculture and urban areas. Its shoreline is irregular, shaped by the terrain it flooded, creating isolated coves and peninsulas. Water levels fluctuate significantly, depending on seasonal input, exposing or submerging land over time. It's not a natural lake, it's a controlled system, designed to manage one of the most essential resources in the region: water. Extending into the Pacific as a rocky headland, Point Dume is defined by elevation and exposure. Rising sharply above the coastline, it provides a vantage point where land, ocean, and sky intersect without obstruction. The cliffs are composed of layered sedimentary rock, shaped by erosion and constant wave impact over thousands of years. Below, tide pools form along the rocky shoreline, creating small ecosystems that change with the ocean's rhythm. During low tide, marine life becomes visible. Anemones, crabs, and small fish temporarily exposed before the water returns. The headland has historically served as a navigational marker due to its visibility from offshore. Today it remains largely undeveloped, preserving its structure and natural features. It doesn't rely on size or complexity. It stands out because of position, where elevation and coastline combine into a single, uninterrupted form. Located at the intersection of the Mojave and Colorado deserts, Joshua Tree National Park represents a transition zone between two distinct ecosystems. This overlap creates a landscape where species from both deserts coexist, resulting in a level of biodiversity uncommon in arid environments. The park is named after the Joshua tree, a species adapted to extreme conditions, capable of surviving long droughts and temperature extremes. These trees can grow up to 40 feet tall and live for hundreds of years, forming irregular, branching shapes that define the terrain. The ground itself is covered in weathered rock formations, created through long-term erosion and temperature fluctuations that fracture and reshape the surface. With minimal light pollution, the park also functions as a dark sky area, revealing celestial visibility rarely seen in developed regions. It's not defined by one feature, but by the collision of two desert systems into one. Enclosed by large rock formations within Joshua Tree National Park, Hidden Valley is a naturally formed basin that creates a contained environment within the larger desert. The surrounding boulders act as barriers, limiting wind flow and slightly altering the internal conditions compared to the open desert outside. This enclosure has historically been used as a shelter, most notably by cattle rustlers in the past, who used the valley to hide stolen livestock. The terrain provided both concealment and protection, making it difficult to access or detect from a distance. Today, the area is known for its loop trail, which runs approximately 1 mile and passes through rock corridors, open clearings and natural passageways formed by erosion. The rock structures themselves are the result of long-term weathering, breaking larger formations into stacked and scattered shapes. It's not hidden by design, it's isolated by structure. Known globally for wine production, Napa Valley's vineyards are the result of a precise combination of climate, soil, and geography. The region's Mediterranean climate, characterised by warm, dry summers and mild, wet winters, creates ideal conditions for growing a variety of grape species. The valley floor is lined with fertile soil, enriched by ancient volcanic activity and sediment deposits. Temperature variations between day and night play a critical role in grape development, allowing sugars to accumulate while preserving acidity. With over 400 wineries, the region operates as both an agricultural system and an economic engine. Each vineyard manages its own microclimate, adjusting irrigation, harvesting and processing techniques to maintain consistency and quality. This isn't just farming, it's controlled cultivation at scale, where natural conditions are carefully managed to produce a specific outcome. Located along the San Andreas Fault, Point Reyes is a landscape shaped by tectonic movement rather than gradual formation. The land itself is part of the Pacific Plate, slowly shifting northwest at a rate of about 2 inches per year relative to the North American Plate. This movement has created a rugged coastline defined by cliffs, beaches, and constant geological instability. Wind speeds frequently exceed 40 miles per hour, and dense fog can reduce visibility for extended periods, making the area one of the most challenging coastal environments in California. The Point Reyes National Seashore includes grasslands, forests, and marine habitats, supporting a wide range of wildlife adapted to these conditions. It's not a stable landscape, it's one in motion, where the ground itself is slowly shifting over time, reshaping the coastline with every passing year. Perched on a narrow cliff along the edge of Point Reyes National Seashore, the Point Reyes Lighthouse exists in one of the most extreme coastal environments on the west coast. Built in 1870, it was designed to guide ships through waters known for dense fog, violent winds and hidden rocks. Reaching it requires descending over 300 steps, carved into the cliffside, an isolation that defined the lives of lighthouse keepers who once maintained it around the clock. The area is among the windiest in California, with gusts often exceeding 40 miles per hour, while fog can reduce visibility for days. The original light source was an oil lamp, later replaced by a powerful Fresnel lens capable of projecting light over 20 miles into the ocean. It wasn't built for comfort, it was built for survival, positioned exactly where danger was highest. Unlike most waterfalls that flow inland, Alamir Falls moves in the opposite direction, dropping directly onto a coastal beach before meeting the ocean. Located within Point Reyes National Seashore, it is one of the rare tide falls in the United States, where fresh water and salt water intersect in a single visible drop. The falls are fed by Alamir Creek, which gathers rainfall from surrounding hills before reaching the edge of a coastal cliff. During winter and early spring, water flow intensifies, creating a continuous cascade. In drier months, the volume decreases but never fully disappears. Reaching the site requires a multi-mile hike, which has helped limit overuse and preserve its condition. The beach below shifts constantly due to tides and erosion, meaning the landing point of the water changes over time. It's not fixed, it's a meeting point between land, gravity, and the ocean. Nestled within the San Bernardino Mountains, Big Bear Lake is a high-altitude reservoir that exists as both a natural setting and a controlled water system. Originally formed in 1884 through the construction of a dam, the lake was designed to supply water for nearby agricultural regions. Today, it sits at over 6,700 feet above sea level, surrounded by forested slopes and mountain ridges. Its elevation creates a climate shift compared to surrounding lowlands, cooler temperatures, seasonal snowfall, and a clear distinction between summer and winter conditions. The lake's surface area and depth fluctuate, depending on precipitation and water management needs. In winter, parts of the lake can freeze along the edges, while in summer it becomes a centre for boating and fishing. It's not purely natural, but it blends into the landscape in a way that makes its engineered origins almost unnoticeable. Hidden within a remote section of the Sierra Nevada, Devil's Postpile is a rare geological formation where lava cooled in a highly organised way, forming nearly perfect hexagonal basalt columns. These columns rise vertically from the ground, some reaching heights of over 60 feet, creating a structure that appears almost artificially designed. This formation occurred around 100,000 years ago, when a thick lava flow cooled slowly and evenly. As it contracted, stress fractures formed in geometric patterns, producing the column-like shapes seen today, a process known as columnar jointing. What makes it unusual is its precision. While similar formations exist elsewhere, few display such uniformity and alignment. The columns are not random. They follow consistent angles and spacing, giving the site a structured, almost engineered appearance. It's not carved. It's crystallized, formed through cooling rather than erosion. Located near Devil's Postpile, Rainbow Falls drops approximately 101 feet, but its defining feature isn't just height, it's light. As water crashes against the rocks below, it creates a constant mist that, under the right angle of sunlight, produces visible rainbows suspended within the air. The falls are fed by the San Joaquin River, with peak flow occurring during late spring, as snowmelt from higher elevations increases water volume. During this period, the force of the water intensifies, expanding the mist field and making the rainbow effect more pronounced. The surrounding rock formations show signs of past volcanic activity, with layered basalt shaping the flow path of the water. Over time, erosion continues to adjust the structure of the falls, slightly altering its shape and impact zone. It's not just a waterfall, it's a combination of movement, light, and timing. Rising from the Mojave Desert, the Kelso Dunes are among the tallest sand dunes in North America, reaching heights of over 600 feet. But what sets them apart isn't just size, it's sound. Under specific conditions, the dunes produce a deep, low-frequency rumble known as booming, or singing sand. This phenomenon occurs when dry, well-sorted sand grains slide down the steep slopes, creating vibrations that resonate through the dune structure. The sound can last for several seconds and carry across the desert, though it requires precise conditions to occur. The dunes formed over thousands of years as wind transported sand from nearby dry lake beds and deposited it into this basin. Unlike smaller dune systems, Kelso's scale allows for both height and acoustic effect. It's not just a visual landscape, it's one that responds physically, turning movement into sound. Straddling the border between California and Nevada, Lake Tahoe is one of the deepest lakes in the United States, reaching depths of over 1,600 feet. Its clarity is what defines it, water so transparent that objects can be seen far below the surface. This clarity is due to a combination of depth, low nutrient levels, and limited algae growth. The lake was formed by tectonic activity and later shaped by glaciers, which carved out its basin and contributed to its current depth and structure. Unlike many lakes, Tahoe has no direct outlet to the ocean. Instead, water flows into the Truckee River, eventually dispersing inland. Its iconic blue colour is a result of how light interacts with its depth. Shorter wavelengths scatter, creating that deep, saturated hue. It's not just deep, it's visually defined by the physics of water and light. Located along the southwestern edge of Lake Tahoe, Emerald Bay is a glacially carved inlet, defined by its distinct shape and isolation. Surrounded by steep granite walls, the bay forms a natural enclosure, separating it visually and structurally from the rest of the lake. At its centre sits Fanette Island, the only island in Lake Tahoe, rising about 150 feet above the water. At the top of the island are the remains of a small stone structure built in the 1920s, once used as a private retreat. The bay's name comes from its colour, caused by light reflecting off shallow water and submerged rock formations, creating a greenish-blue appearance distinct from the deeper tones of the main lake. Formed by glacial movement thousands of years ago, the bay represents a localised reshaping of the larger lake system. It's not separate, but it feels contained within its own boundaries. Covering nearly 1,200 square miles, Yosemite National Park is defined by scale, elevation, and geological exposure. Its landscape was shaped primarily by glacial activity, which carved deep valleys, exposed granite cliffs, and created the vertical structures that define the park today. The valley floor sits beneath towering formations like Half Dome and El Capitan, while waterfalls drop from heights exceeding 2,000 feet during peak flow. These features were not formed quickly. They were revealed as glaciers moved through the region, stripping away softer material and leaving behind solid granite. The park includes multiple ecosystems, from forested lowlands to alpine zones, each supporting different forms of life. Seasonal snowmelt feeds rivers and waterfalls, driving continuous change throughout the landscape. It's not just preserved, it's exposed, showing layers of Earth's history through elevation and erosion. Located about 22 miles off the California coast, Santa Catalina Island exists as a separate world, isolated by water and protected from mainland development. Its rugged terrain rises sharply from the ocean, shaped by tectonic activity and erosion over time. Nearly 88% of the island is preserved as a protected area, limiting construction and maintaining its natural structure. The only incorporated city, Avalon, operates under strict regulations, including limits on vehicle ownership, which has led to golf carts becoming the primary mode of transport. The island was formed through geological uplift, not volcanic activity, giving it a different composition than nearby coastal features. Its isolation has allowed unique ecosystems to develop, with species adapted specifically to the island environment. It's not just distant, it's controlled, where geography and regulation work together to limit change. Located within the Mojave Desert, Dumont Dunes form a massive sand system, shaped entirely by wind. Rising in smooth, steep slopes, the dunes were created as sand from nearby dry lake beds, was carried into a basin and trapped over time. Unlike smaller dune fields, Dumont's size allows for large-scale movement. Wind patterns continuously reshape the surface, erasing footprints and creating new ridges within hours. Despite this movement, the dunes remain in the same general location due to surrounding terrain that contains the sand. The slopes can exceed angles that make climbing physically demanding, especially under extreme desert temperatures. Surface conditions shift depending on moisture and wind intensity, affecting both stability and texture. It's not a fixed structure, it's a constantly moving mass, held in place by forces that never stop acting on it. Constructed in 1905 as part of an attempt to recreate Venice, Italy, the Venice canals represent an engineered landscape that has adapted over time. Originally spanning over 3 miles, much of the system was later removed as automobiles became dominant. What remains today is a reduced but restored network of waterways lined with residential structures. Arched footbridges cross over narrow canals, replacing what was once a transportation system based on boats. Water circulation is now controlled to prevent stagnation, maintaining the clarity and stability of the system. Unlike natural waterways, the canals rely on management to sustain their condition. It's not purely artificial anymore. It has evolved into a hybrid environment where design and natural processes coexist within a controlled framework.